Oh, I'm anxious to get started.
I know. Let's, hold on one second. So start with welcome.
I'm so happy that you have come to hear my life story and celebrate my first book, Big Dreams. I would like to begin by reading the dedication. Sure. Is this better? Oh, yeah. I dedicate my book to my daughter, Monica Bill Barnes. She has been my emotional support from a very young age. She is the one who has always had my back. We have been close since the day I gave birth to her. She came out of the womb with a tightly closed fist. I considered that power to women. I also want to acknowledge those writers who have read my drafts of my work, especially Brooke Warner, who has been my constant reader, offering feedback to make my writing stronger. I've been supported by women writers and friends from Writers' Residency at Hedgebrook, the Anderson Center, and Ragdale. Monica has believed in me and continually encouraged me to write. She has been invaluable in the editing process, as well as Kayla Hansen right here, who has helped edit my manuscript. Monica believes and has faith in me even when I doubt myself, and there is no limit to the love that she gives me. I would like to read, to begin by reading I would like to read a part of the second essay called Growing Up is Hard. And that's it. In adolescence, I had realized that my future would be in the larger world beyond my hometown. I knew I would challenge my family and cultural assumptions about women. I did not know, however, that I would be hindered by these assumptions about women in marriage and work, and at times disadvantaged by them. When I was entering UC San Francisco, a bank could refuse to issue a credit card to a woman, an unmarried woman, and if she was married, my husband was required to co-sign, and if she were married, her husband would have to co-sign. It took the Equal Credit Opportunity Act of 1974 to make these practices illegal. I did not know in 1963, when I made an appointment with a nationally known brokerage firm, that I would be dismissed with a smirk by the stockbroker of my own age and denied my request to open an investment account. Experience is one thing, knowledge and examination of one's life is another. Through marriage, work, motherhood, particularly mothering, I was compelled toward reflection and introspection. My journey led me through readings at spiritual retreats, writers' residencies, and conversations with women friends. In 1995, at Hedgebrook, a woman's writing residency, I met Teresa. On the first night of my 3-week residency, she greeted me with a big hug and a welcome as I walked into the farmhouse kitchen for dinner. As the evening went on, with a lively talk and jokes, some of which I didn't understand but laughed anyway, abide too loudly and with poor timing, I felt intimidated to hold my own in this conversation. I said something stupid that even now I'm embarrassed to admit. I'm not sure exactly what I said, but something about asinine-like. One of my best friends is lesbian. Score 0 out of 10 on that one. What most added to my feelings of intimidation was that I hid enormous doubts about my ability to be a creative writer. After dinner, Teresa invited me to go for a walk on the beach. She asked me how I was doing. What came out of my mouth was dumb, and I didn't get some of the jokes, and I hope I didn't offend anyone. I was disappointed in myself and wondered what kind of an impression I had made. Teresa said, I felt like, I felt like I was not the only one who felt intimidated. I said, I felt like I said some inappropriate things, especially about my best friend being lesbian. I felt I was not myself. I was guarded, and the lesbian thing I am comfortable with, but I felt like I was perceived as square. Teresa said, it was obvious that you were uncomfortable. On my first night, I went to 2 writers to apologize for something I said. As she walked me back to my cottage and hugged me good night, I felt better, but with mixed feelings. I am so intense, unsure, and elated. As the week progressed, Teresa became a dear friend, and I came to treasure each of the other 4 writers. Growing up, I had an aspiration to be Betty Grable. Any of you not know Betty Grable? Okay. Because, okay, growing up, I had an aspiration to be Betty Grable and a suspicion that I was African American. I actually have a friend who had the same experience. Okay. Neither turned out to be possible or true. Looking back with nostalgia peppered with experience, my family and cultural expectations gave me the opportunity to become who I am the hard way. In truth, I wasn't given the skills I needed, but I learned them, often faking it until I practiced them. But isn't that the best way to own knowledge, by working hard for it rather than having it given to you? I would have done some things differently, given the chance. I would have run for student body president rather than commissioner of activities with my winning campaign, let's be snazzy, vote for Brazzy. Still? Okay. I would like to try harder to find a way to reason with my mom and actively elicit from my dad. In my own persistent way, I did confront her by breaking the stereotype of the 50s and 60s. I would have believed my math teacher, the dean of student activities, who wrote in my yearbook, without a doubt, one of the few outstanding students I've had the pleasure to work with. Keep your sights high, Donna. You can be anything you set your mind to. A job well done. I think I should skip on. Finally, I'd like to read from a part of the essay entitled My Destiny Year. To give some context to this story, I'm at a retreat led by Ursula Casbury, who is someone I deeply admire for her compassion and her insight. I trusted her. Thank you so much for letting me. One more. They're working me pretty hard, folks. But I couldn't do it without her. And I can't fire her. She's cost too much money. I can't afford her. Okay. All right. Okay. Toward the end of the retreat, Ursula asked us to do an exercise on the question, what is your destiny? What is your destiny? I wasn't enthused, but I had such respect and admiration for Ursula that I gave it my best shot. I took off in pursuit of an outdoor nook and attempted to quiet myself. I would describe myself as a morning, afternoon, and late evening type person who wakes up and is raring to go. In a retreat setting, I'm conscious to monitor my enthusiasm to become more introspective. I sat on a bench dedicated to our friend Brick, shaded by a mature oak tree under the July morning sun. It was quiet except for the birds whistling in variety of dialects. The scene began to calm down my body, but not my mind, as I wondered whether the assortment of birds could understand each other in each other's language. Good question, but beyond my comprehension at this moment. If I listened carefully and patiently, I could hear the ocean in the distance, the hum of traffic on the Highway 1. I felt delicious outside with the fresh air, the slight breeze, and warmth, in contrast to the cool, stale indoor air. This was a good place to exhale and remind myself to breathe. What is destiny? It seemed a powerful concept, but I don't believe in predestination. I believe in free will and hard work. My brainy self informed me that we know ourselves primarily in interaction with others and in how others observe us in that same situation. Halt! A loud feminine voice exclaimed from nowhere. Please, she said quietly. As I was thinking my way around the idea of destiny, it turned up, not in a vision, but in a voice. This was not a burning bush experience, not a road to Damascus encountered where your sight is temporarily taken and your name is stolen, not a dream or a visitation like an angel descending upon the Virgin Mary. It was a comfortable, absolute, and quiet yes experience. Like taking a walk in the very early morning when the possibility of peace seems promising, destiny told me, you are to tell women's stories. Telling women's stories, what an idea. I knew what I'd heard to be true, as I knew my eyes were brown without looking in the mirror. I liked my destiny, but I wasn't educationally prepared for it. Telling women's stories to me seemed to assume creative writing skills. I didn't know how I would do it. At the beginning of a new career, I was still just a sociologist with ideas of preparing for a manuscript for publication. I had primarily interviewed men, only a few women. Besides, as a floundering academic writer, it was hard enough to get scientific journals interested in women's issues. Taking on the task of a successful writer, narrative nonfiction was daunting. But that, I just lost my place. Practical consideration aside, it felt good to know my destiny. I was to tell women's stories. After the anxieties, I'm not prepared for this, I felt calm and serene. In this newly opened, vulnerable state, I found myself seated next to Valerie. Valerie did serious work as a social worker, but with the joy of a comedian. As this was one of our last meals together, some of our conversations traveled to what we did back home. It turned out that we shared a work life that included women's health, HIV issues, and social issues. I was impressed by her joy, her serious work, and her sense of humor, and her profound interest in helping people. It turned out that she was a lay member of the Immaculate Heart community that had sponsored this retreat. As we talked, I shared how powerful the destiny experience had been for me and how I've learned I was to tell women's stories. I told her about that halt, her voice, how it was loud and clear. Valerie stated at me, and for a moment without speaking, then she said, I know a woman you should meet. And that was really the beginning of doing the actual work of interviewing women who were very definitely ostracized because they were really considered to be whores. But in fact, the way that most women acquired HIV was from men who did not disclose their status.
Right here. I was floored by the synchronicity.
I was floored by the synchronicity of what she proceeded to share with me. Choosing to sit next to a relative stranger was no coincidence. I figured that my destiny experience was a gift from God, and sitting next to Valerie was divine intervention. The long and short of it was that she wanted me to meet and interviewed Maria, a young woman with HIV, and Valerie was willing to arrange for it to happen before I started my drive home the next day. We were both enthusiastic and agreed to work on the details. In preparation, I called my husband to have him go into my study and find and fax me my research material, including the informed consent details necessary for human subject research. Being selected by Valerie to interview the woman thrilled me, and I knew from experience how difficult it was to locate and recruit women. Water. Thank you. Culturally, of the enormous stigma for women with HIV. Culturally, women's roles were to be mothers and protectors of children, but frequently within multiple social institutions such as family, church, employment, women with HIV were seen as vectors of the virus, even though statistically the most frequent mode of transmission for women was being infected by men who were HIV positive and did not disclose it. The next morning, July 23rd, 1993, over breakfast, Valerie gave me handwritten directions with a map to Maria's home. I was to meet her at 1 o'clock that afternoon. I was ready and eager to proceed. I knew how to do this. I had interviewed people with HIV, mostly men and a few women, for my dissertation. Fortunately, I had brought a cassette player to listen to my music, but unfortunately, I had a blank tape. I looked over my music collection and chose Baroque Music Super Learning, a tape that is really silly. A tape I had listened to while studying classic theory of Marx, Weber, and Durkheim in hopes of being able to remember them. I had no regrets for taping over Maria's interview. 2 days after my destiny was known to me, I met Maria in a most unlikely and alienated part of California, revealed by the cumulative depleting effects of years of trickle-down Reaganomics. Despite the Silicon Valley boom, after a few hours' drive, I was facing Maria and pressed record. I embraced my destiny and thus began my journey as a creative writer. Ursula and her retreat gave me all the promise in her title: Women Connecting, Sharing Strengths, Taking Risk, Making Changes. Because of it all, I was ready to make changes in my prescribed role as sociologist. Because of HALT experience, I was eager to add to the role of creative writer. The identity still feels like it belongs to someone else. No, that is my inner critic in her most negative mood, and I am not listening to her. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for celebrating with me today.
We have cake, and we welcome you. Hi, Helen. Sorry, I should take these off. Oh gosh, please, that would be wonderful.
Oh, so come on up.
I'll bring this to you, Helen.
especially because there are a lot of folks here in the church now that were not here when Donna and Ken first started in the, late 70s? You came here? Okay. I just wanted to comment about the effect that Donna's journey had on some of us women in the church. I grew up in UCC. My family started a church in Westchester, Illinois, and we had many ministers, all married, and all of their wives essentially were adjunct ministers to their male minister husbands. And I thought that's the way it was. Well, I get to Arlington, and there's this woman who shows up occasionally. She's not there every Sunday. Who is that woman? And so I learned that Donna had decided that she was not, when you hire Ken, you don't hire her too. I just thought that was amazing. How courageous. And right there in front of God and everybody. You know? And just so that you know that I was not the only one as affected, one day you had some sort of women's get-together at your house, and Abby Laurie was there. Abby Laurie was the wife of yet another UCC minister who, upon graduation, upon retirement, joined our church. And she had been that typical minister's wife. And she got up in front of Donna at this party Donna threw, and she said, "Donna, you have been a model for me. Had I only known then what I know now, I would have run my life differently." Thank you, Donna.
Did anyone else want to offer any words? Okay.
Thank you all so much for being here, for celebrating with us. It's just such an incredible accomplishment, and we really appreciate you being a part of this 29-year journey. We will cut up cake. Please spend some time. We'd love to hear your thoughts, and thank you all so, so much.
One last thank you to this woman who I couldn't have done it without her.